Our next question comes from Jason Martell. We're kind of on a movie kick today. Jason says this. Imagine you got access to some incredible medical device, like in the movie Elysium. It's a sci-fi movie. They had these devices that could basically instantly cure them at some point in the movie. They can instantly heal all injuries. Oh, he explains it for you if you didn't see it. They can instantly heal all injuries, including brain damage. Okay, so a group of people with no martial arts training are going to learn to fight just by fighting each other several times a day until they get good. And in between fights, they use that medical device to heal themselves, of course. After a decade or so practicing, how good do you think they would be at fighting? And what do you imagine their fighting style to look like? Now, that's an interesting question. And I understand why you asked it, because that's one of the great limiting factors of training is how much you can get injured and still keep going. But I would posit to you the possibility that the progress that we have made, not just in martial arts, but as humans in general, is specifically due to the fact that we are mortal and killable and injurable, and there is a limit to what we can do. And without that limit, you remove those limits and suddenly you remove the motivation to get stuff done and to create improvements. If we could take as much damage as we wanted and just instantly heal and suffer no consequences for it, for one, combat sports would not be particularly interesting. I don't think anybody would care about it. I don't know if any of you remember this, but a while back there was a fight promoter, and he was interested in armed weapons combat, like fighting with swords and sticks and axes and stuff like that. But he wanted to do it in a UFC-like environment, but, well, there's one obvious problem. With real swords and axes and clubs, people die. And you can't do that, not anymore. It's not the days of the Roman Colosseums and the gladiators, right? So he proposed a solution where these high-tech body armor suits and have blunted weapons, and it looked neat, it looked fun, it looked like a good time. But it didn't catch on. It didn't become the next UFC like he hoped it would. It's an exciting, fun idea, but why not? Why are people so vested in their interest in watching boxers beat the crap out of each other and suffer from long-term brain damage? Why are we so interested in watching MMA fights where fighters can potentially snap their legs in half and do horrible things and suffer these awful, lasting injuries? Why? Why is it that in these sports where before competing the fighters have to acknowledge, legally, before the law, I accept the fact that fighting is an inherently dangerous sport which may result in serious injury or death? Why does that draw us to it? And not the safe weapons fighting with the armor and the blunted blades, where nobody gets hurt, where nobody gets a bruise, even though it looks cool and it's probably very fun to do. Simple answer. Our limitations are, one, what makes it interesting, and two, what pushes us forward to excellence. Think about anyone who has achieved any degree of excellence in life. Any degree. There was a certain sacrifice involved. Sacrifice of what? Of time, of resources, of self, sometimes of life and limb. We think about war heroes. Why do we celebrate war heroes? Why? Because they risked death. Sometimes they were horribly injured in the process. They did something courageous. Why is it courageous? Because there's a risk involved. If there's no risk, who cares? Think about the narrative of the Garden of Eden for a moment. There are a lot of Christians who have this idea, and I think it's kind of a messed up idea, that God wanted us to stay in the Garden of Eden, and that it's a bad thing that Adam and Eve got kicked out when they ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. If you don't know the story, quick recap. God creates Adam and Eve, the first humans, makes a beautiful garden, the Garden of Eden. Sets them free and says, you may eat of any tree in the garden except for that one, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you do so, you shall surely die. And Satan comes in the form of the serpent and tempts Eve and tells her, if you eat of this fruit, it'll make you wise. And Eve says, but what about what God said? Satan's like, never mind that. Eve eats the fruit, gives some to Adam. They are gifted with the knowledge of good and evil. Suddenly they realize they've been running around naked this whole time, and they're like, whoa, let's put some clothes on. God finds them. He's like, come on, guys. Sends them out of the garden. Puts cherubim and a flaming sword in the way to prevent them from coming back in and eating of the tree of life so that they may live forever in this fallen state. And in traditional Christianity, it is often thought that, oh, this is a bad thing. If only they hadn't eaten that fruit, and that's a bunch of crap. And I'll tell you why. Because living in this idyllic state, with no death, no suffering, no risk, also involves no reward. There's no pain, there's no pleasure. Think about that. Think about it. There's no risk, there's no reward. And so as long as they are there in this garden, they're like children. They don't really know anything. If you don't know the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, contrasts, hot and cold, whatever it is, you don't know anything. You really don't. So it's a good thing. They left the garden. Why? Why? What is so great and glorious about being in this cold, cruel world, where thorns infest the ground, where by the sweat of our brow we must eat our bread, as the good book says? Why? For the simple reason that is what pushes progress. If you want to get to the next level, that's what it takes. Now, this is a fairly lengthy departure from your question, and you might think, well, we're branching into the philosophical. It is kind of a philosophical question. Now, if I could take some crazy risks in fighting, let's get back to the practical application of fighting for a minute. If I could take some crazy risks without consequences, and I had a sparring partner who could do the same, that would be really, really interesting. I think at this point, if it was a professional fighter, right? And I'm a former professional fighter, a lot of combat sports experience, and we were gifted with that ability to instantly heal, we could have some really interesting learning sessions. But eventually, I think we'd get bored. Essentially being gifted with immortality and the ability to instantly heal. We'd think, what the heck are we doing wasting our lives with combat sports? Why did I get into combat sports in the first place? I needed a paycheck to make some extra money, because the 3 jobs I was working wasn't enough. Fighting is a poor man's sport. We do it largely out of necessity. Some people think, oh, it's for the glory, it's for the greatness. Very, very, very few people achieve that greatness, if you will. And even then, what do they get as a reward? Think about Muhammad Ali. He said, I hated every minute of training, but I told myself, don't quit. Suffer now, so you can live the rest of your life as a champion. The strength and power in those words. Suffer now, so you can live the rest of your life as a champion. And even then, the late, great Muhammad Ali passed on this mortal coil, like we all shall. But if there was no suffering in that equation, if it was easy, if it was always easy, who was that boxer who said, oh man, blanking on the name, it's hard to get up to run at 4 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets. That's a different type of comfort. The road to hell and damnation is comfortable, friends. It feels nice. Did you know that? You might not have, because we have these images of the devil and his demons with their pitchforks looking all gnarly and beastly and, we're going to get you. Right? And so we don't generally associate the road to hell and damnation as being nice and comfortable and easy. Yeah, that's the easy way. The greatest burden that you will ever carry is the one that you put on yourself, man. It's not something you were born with. It's not something your parents passed down to you. It's not something your neighbors did to you. It's you standing in the way of you. If you took two guys who didn't know how to fight and gifted them with a sci-fi machine that could instantly heal them, they'd probably have fun with that for a while. Like the guys in the high-tech suits of armor with the blunted weapons playing that sword-fighting game that nobody really wanted to watch, but it looked really fun. It looked really fun, right? How long do they play that game for? Until it gets boring. And I would venture to say it gets boring pretty quick. Faster than you might think. Because reward is relative to risk. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.